if you can't be a supermom, that's on you, right? Like, we've given you the workforce. You can work, you can have a home, you can be married, you can have kids. So if you can't do it all, you're the one who's failing at it. But the problem is not an individual failing at this. The problem is that the expectations are impossible.
Welcome to Worthy Mother Podcast. I'm your host, Emily Hardy, a mom of two on a mission to help moms everywhere feel less alone. This is not a parenting podcast. Instead, it's a space for pushing back against societal expectations of perfection and embracing self-compassion in your motherhood journey. Let's get into it. Welcome back to Worthy Mother Podcast. Today we are going to be talking about the Supermom myth, and joining me is mom therapist Stacy McCann. We are going to be talking about this myth of the supermom, and really, in a sense, how we as a society tend to almost glorify the mental load of motherhood through the way we speak about mothers, the way we celebrate mothers, just what we expect of moms. And I'm so excited to get into this. You know, I'm all about challenging societal expectations and really bringing attention to why those expectations are the way they are, why they might be problematic, the way we're talking about things. So super excited to have you here, Stacy. Welcome. Can you just introduce yourself? Tell us about you and the work you do.
Yeah, thank you again so much for having me. I'm so excited to just keep having this conversation. I feel like the more we talk about this, the more we can normalize that maybe being a supermom is not something to celebrate. So yeah, we will talk about that. I am a licensed clinical mental health therapist. I'm a social worker. I've been licensed for almost 15 years at this point. I currently run my own private practice where I support an entire caseload of moms through mental health therapy. Almost all of them are moms of young children who are feeling just sort of in the weeds as far as their care, but also overwhelm, burnout, overstimulation, all the things that heavy mental load. So I support moms in that capacity. And I also do some parent coaching on the side. I have a lot of attachment training. And so I work with a lot of parents on some attachment-based parenting stuff. I am also a mom. I have one. She just turned 6. I like to call her sweet and spicy. She's a little of both. And I live in the St. Louis area. I'm actually on the Illinois side of the Mississippi River, and I run my practice from there. And I'm also pretty active on Instagram, which is, I think, how we connected. So we can talk about that more at the end. But yeah, that's kind of what I'm doing. And in my work, I feel like my theme has been, let's talk about why you're here, which is moms are coming to me and they are saying I'm overwhelmed, I'm burnt out, I'm not getting the help that I need, I'm not getting the support that I need. And as we dig deeper, we end up kind of talking about it's not about the dishwasher and it's not about the laundry. There's a lot of deeper themes at play, which we'll talk about. And so I guess my theme is how did we get here? And my whole goal is for moms to stop just looking internally at how did I get here? And I want them to start looking externally and how was I led here? How did I end up here? What forces drove me here? So that's kind of my work.
That is so fascinating, that question and just the answer of looking not just internally. I'm super big on understanding self-awareness as our awareness of self in the context. Because I think specifically when we're talking about motherhood and all these things that you work with moms with, the factors that contribute to what's actually going on inside the home or what's going on internally inside of us is this much bigger structure at play, right? And there's so many things that contribute, and it's impossible to separate that.
Right. It is very much, it's an onion, right? There's many layers, and we are one piece of that layer. So I don't want anyone to think that I'm just saying moms are victims and they've, they've sort of fell into this. And I think our role has actually been diminished when you look at all the other factors at play. I think that how we got here started when we were born, started before we were born, started with societal trends and pressures. It started with how we were raised. All of these things fall into place before we even have children. And then we have children and we start to see them play out in real time. So I think it is very multifaceted, and it is not just an individual problem. And I think when we celebrate supermoms, and we can talk about that supermom myth, that we make it an individual problem, right? That if you can't be a supermom, that's on you, right? We've given you the workforce. You can work, you can have a home, you can be married, you can have kids. So if you can't do it all, you're the one who's failing at it. But the problem is not an individual failing at this. The problem is that the expectations are impossible.
Yeah.
It is not an individual problem. It's a societal problem. It is a much larger issue.
Yeah. Let's get into the
Sure.
supermom myth. Can you just kind of give us the basic rundown of like what is this myth that you're talking about?
Sure. So this was like a product of the second wave of feminism, which was like 70s going into the 80s, where moms were like jumping back into the workforce, right? Like we want to work full time, we want to have careers, and we should have that. We're allowed to have that, and feminism really pushed that forward, and that's a great thing, right? Like moms should absolutely have that option if that's what they'd like to do. But it really drove far in that direction to where the expectations suddenly became that, like, well, you can have a career, but you also have to have a home life, and you also have to be raising these children, and you also have to be supporting your husband. And so the problem is that, like, we added a career onto a mother's plate without taking anything else off and without offering any societal structure or support to allow a mother to be supermom, to handle all of this at once. So we added more, but we didn't take anything else away, and we didn't support in any other way. So 70s and 80s, this whole supermom trope came to life. That became sort of this goal until everyone sort of started to realize, and I think it was sort of a slow roll through the 90s into the 2000s. But what I think really kicked it was the pandemic. I think when the pandemic hit, it really like this like tiny grasp that mothers had on like their last string, right? To like really keep it all together, like the pandemic just shattered it. And so mothers left the workforce again, right? Like the numbers coming out of the pandemic of how many mothers left work is not fathers, mothers left the workforce is insane. And so mothers left work again, and everything sort of shattered, and the light really like shone on the fact that mothers were carrying all of this and crumbling under the weight of it. So I think starting in that that 2020 forward, I think everyone sort of started to realize this is impossible. Like, why are we celebrating super moms when the expectations are not, they're impossible, they're not realistic, and that nobody can live up to them. And so everybody ultimately fails.
Yeah. I mean, yes to all of that. And I'm curious where you see the myth of the supermom being perpetuated. I know we're recording this right before Mother's Day, and a couple of years back I did an episode on how like the way we celebrate moms can be problematic.
Sure.
So I know there's a lot in like the language used to like, you're a superhero mom, and it just puts a lot, it's like we're humans.
Yeah.
But where are you seeing that the most?
So there's really no denying that like we live in like a patriarchal society, right? That like our society is run by and for men, generally speaking. I think it benefits the way our society is currently running, which is sort of a male-dominated workforce where many women, even if they're working, are expected to cover what's happening at home without obviously pay, but also without acknowledgement a lot of the time. I think it benefits this structure to celebrate moms as supermoms. Because I think when our society celebrates moms as supermoms, it feels like, okay, I've done what I've had to do. I've given you your pizza party for being an amazing mom. I don't have to make childcare affordable. I don't have to like extend your maternity leave. I've given you a pizza party. You're an amazing mom. Great job. I think it kind of allows our system to keep running if we feed that message to mothers that like, you're doing a great job. You're working. You have a home. You have a husband. You have kids. It's amazing. And so, I mean, it's not an easy answer to say that like I see this celebration of the supermom myth as like a societal celebration, because how do you change that? And I see it as a patriarchal celebration because I think it keeps mothers sort of in their place, right? That like it keeps mothers from maybe entering the workforce full time or from, leaving the workforce full time. It keeps mothers on the phone talking to school when school calls them their child is sick. It keeps moms answering the portal messages when the doctor sends them. It keeps moms in that place so that men can go work and do the things that they have to do out there. So I think it's a societal celebration. I also think, and I know you said rabbit holes, right? Like there's a lot of rabbit holes with this. And there's another rabbit hole of like internalized misogyny where even women sort of might celebrate this about themselves or other women because they've not known any other way to live or be. And also some women also benefit from the way this is run, especially white women tend to benefit mostly. They tend to benefit financially and they tend to benefit with comfort and home and all of that stuff. So I do think some women are also continuing that celebration. But I do think the tides are changing. I think the tides are changing with women first because they They always do. But women being sort of at the core of this, I think they're starting to sort of wake up and say, like, I never asked for this. I didn't want to be a super mom. It was given to me. It was forced on me. I don't want this life. I don't want to be working 40, 45 hours a week, doing the rat race of coming home, raising my kids, and having literally no acknowledgement that this is happening. And so I think women are waking up to that and finally starting to find the words to label it and to say it out loud, and to sort of buck against it, right? That, like, I don't want you to celebrate me as a supermom. I want you to pay for my kids' childcare, or, like, extend my maternity leave, or allow me to have the choice whether I want to work or not force me to work or force me not to work.
Yeah.
So I think women are starting to wake up, but I think it's still very much celebrated in a societal way because it works for our society.
Yeah. Okay. There's so much in there. Again, the little rabbit hole, so many things I want to get into. But one thing that's kind of clicking for me as you're saying all of this, and I've spoken about this on the podcast before, but when I was a teacher, so I was an elementary school teacher, and that part of my career was like right before the pandemic and then through the pandemic. And one time, like fall of 2020, there was some training we had at the school, all-day training for teachers, and it was superhero themed. And there was like one of the sessions was on self-care, and it was all about celebrating how we were superheroes and all this stuff. And I remember feeling so frustrated. I'm like, we're being crushed under the pressure right now. And, having conversations with colleagues about that. And that's coming to a place where right now is, when we're recording this, it's Teacher Appreciation Week. I'm not a teacher anymore, but just got Starbucks gift cards for my kids' teachers. We're we're in it. And I saw something on probably Threads earlier this week about, the careers that have appreciation weeks are the ones that are underpaid.
Yeah, right.
And I think that those conversations, like you said, the pandemic has shifted things for moms. I think those conversations are coming about because of the pandemic in a new way when it comes to paid work and also like motherhood. But these kind of roles that we glorify and celebrate in this way so that we don't have to pay them, a wage that makes sense or whatever.
Sure.
And how there's patriarchy involved there because these tend to be like female dominated careers. And so that connection of like the pandemic shining a light on that in a bigger way. We saw that with healthcare workers, right? Like in a huge way of like, superheroes, you guys are doing it, you're superheroes. And it's like, we're human.
Yeah, right.
We're human.
Yeah, and maybe could you just like send us some masks? Like I don't really care
Yes.
about, like we just need stuff that like we can actually use in our job, or like money that covers our leave when we actually have COVID. You know what I mean? Like, we need like actual, and that's what I sort of had that message about Teacher Appreciation Week too, that like a pizza party is great and like I'll take a free lunch, but I would rather you show up at the PTO meeting or the school board meeting and advocate for our position, or advocate for the PE teacher who's about to be cut, or or do those kind of boots on the ground type of stuff. I think the pandemic, as you were talking, I was kind of thinking like, if we're talking about a societal American, and I stress it just because it is similar elsewhere, but I don't have experience there, and other cultures change. But in our American society, if our society benefits from moms doing the unpaid labor in the background, I think why the pandemic shook that is because the pandemic shook our society's structure, right? So the pandemic almost like introduced this earthquake into the way our society runs, and everybody shook for a second. We're like, whoa, our foundation doesn't seem quite so solid when something like this happens. So of course, who picks up the slack? Who's leaving work to homeschool their children? It's moms who are doing those things. But I think it was almost like, for whatever reason, a light clicked on and was like, look at all your fellow moms doing this. Look at all your fellow dads who did not have to do this, who still go to work every day, or who had a paid leave and now they're back in the office. Like, it is your mothers who did this. And now we're far enough out of the pandemic that I think we can look back and say, like, that's who suffered during this pandemic. I mean, in addition to the people who actually suffered from the pandemic, mothers were in the background carrying the weight of it. I really just like clicked the light on, and I don't, in a way that I think hadn't been done before.
Yeah, I would completely agree with that. And the way things were, like, it happened at a time in history when we have access to each other and to, Instagram. You get on Instagram and see what's going on in other places.
Right. And it also happened at a time in history when our political environment was changing and was starting to be incredibly divisive. Not starting, because that started 2016, 2015.
Yeah.
But was in a very divisive place. And so I
Yes.
think this was like fuel to the fire for the
Totally.
divisiveness, which is also playing into, all of this as well.
Yeah. Ugh. There's so much in there. Okay. I definitely do want to get into like our responsibility versus like what we kind of have to release in order to like maintain our own sanity.
Sure.
Before we do that, I would love to talk really explicitly about the mental load of
Okay.
motherhood.
Yeah.
Because sometimes I just brush over it, but I think it is important to like name it.
Yeah.
What is the load that we're carrying?
So let's talk about the mental load, because that is a huge piece of the invisible labor that mothers do that has never, and probably, won't ever be paid for or even directly acknowledged until we talk about it. But the mental load is the prepping, the planning, and the predicting of future tasks, future events, day-to-day tasks, big tasks, dishwasher unloading, birthday parties, all the things that we do as parents, which we're expected to do, which all of us signed on to do. We all signed on to throw birthday parties for our kids. We all signed on to unload the dishwasher every single day of the rest of our lives. We did. What we did not know we were signing on for was the mental load of it, which is the planning and the predicting of that task. So mental load, I think of, is me thinking 3 months ahead. So every single day I wake up and I do the things, but I'm also thinking, oh, I have to order her uniform for softball that starts in 2 weeks. Just this morning, I had to order boots for her dance recital, which is in a week and a half, which I probably should have ordered 2 weeks ago. But like, that's mental load, is like me thinking ahead and looking at the calendar and saying, these things are coming. I have to do the things to prepare for those. And that is incredibly unique to moms. It is not natural. It is not intuitive. It is just unique that moms are the ones doing it. And they're doing it because nobody else will. And because there is sort of a pressure out there to be this like type A on top of it mom, super mom, right? And so you have this super mom pressure. And so the mental load feels very large for that reason as well. Without that pressure, the mental load exists and is carried by mothers. But I think the added pressure of like, you also have to be super mom. So you better order those boots 2 weeks in advance, because then what if they don't fit and then you're screwed, right? So like, you have that added pressure on top of it. And that pressure comes from everywhere, but social media obviously like exacerbates it. So you go on Instagram and see these like perfect dance recital outfits and you're like, okay. So that's the mental load. I think men are not tuned into that mental load. And there are many reasons for that. The biggest reason is that they've never had to be, right? They've never, ever had to be. They don't know it exists. They don't know their moms were carrying it. Their dads never tuned into it. Their dads never taught them how to do it. So like, this is not just a single man problem. This is the way that we raise boys problem. And the way that we raise boys in our country is to kind of think of themselves first, not in a selfish way, but just in a like, you don't have to think of anyone else first. You can just think of yourself first, to not be in touch with any of their feelings. And so then they don't know how to be in touch with their wives' feelings or their children's feelings, and to move on, have a family, and provide financially. That's it. That's where we stop. We do not talk about how men should connect and bond with their children. We do not talk about how men need to predict and be in touch with their wives' feelings. We don't talk about those things. If you have a job and you bring in a paycheck, then you're doing your job as a dad. Congratulations. So the mental load, women have always had to take it. It's always been there. And I think just now we are starting to actually have words to put to it, to say that like, I don't care if you unload the dishwasher again. What I care about is that, our daughter only drinks from the purple water bottle, and that purple water bottle is not in the dishwasher. And that's a problem. So that's what we need more of.
Yeah. Well, what's interesting as you're saying all of that, and when you're talking about the mental load for moms and the super mom idea, kind of like adding pressure to that. So it's like the mental load exists, but it adds the pressure. It's like there's a lot of shame then in not doing it well, right?
Sure.
Because you're not doing it to the extent that you're seeing other moms being celebrated for. I know for me, that's something that I'm like kind of a hot mess. And like when I'm fine with that, right? Like I am fine with things being a certain way, but then it's also like even hearing conversations about how moms are doing all these things. I'm like, well, I'm not doing those things. Like, is there something wrong with me? All that. What's interesting as you're saying all that and you're talking about raising boys, and I have 2 boys and I'm conscious of this, and also like half the time drowning in my own stuff. So it's hard to even think about how to raise them in these ways. But even just teaching them how to care about these things and tune into other people's needs and all these things, when men become dads And even if there's a single dad who's raising his kids on his own, there's no woman involved, right? Or two dads or whatever. The things that they are celebrated for is not super dad. It's
Right.
not this like crazy amount of mental load. It's like, no, you got your kid to school and they've got a little messy ponytail. Good for you, right? Like
Yeah.
the expectations are so different. It's not just the like men being good dads, men being in tune with these things. Like they literally don't have the shame put on them, the pressure put on them
Right.
to do it to this level of like superhuman execution. And I just like the solution, I don't know what the solution is. I think there's like progress of like we do a better job raising boys in this way and having these conversations, labeling it. But I think just the nature of the patriarchal society, it's like the shame will exist for the women and it won't exist for the men.
Yeah. Like you said, our expectations for men are very, very low for dads.
Yeah.
And really not necessarily for all men, but for dads especially. Here is how I think it could change. I think women will talk about it. I think women will start labeling it. We'll start naming it. I don't think women can create the change all on their own. I think men have to create the change, actually. And we do that two ways. We start verbalizing it to our partners, our husbands. We talk about it with our husbands. Our husbands are able to be vulnerable and able to peel back and touch base with their own emotions. They have to go to therapy. They have to work through their stuff, right? Men have to work on themselves in order to make progress in this societal issue too. So women start talking about it. Women say, we cannot keep going like this. Men say, okay, I'll work on it. And they do. They work on themselves. They get into a good place with their partner. Then they tell their friends. They tell their brother. They tell the other people in their circles, like, hey, our relationship's better than ever. And it's because I went to therapy. It's because I worked on my shit. It's because I like touched base with what she needed. And it wasn't just unloading the dishwasher. It's because I did these things. So they have to then start talking about it. That's one way. The second way is raising boys. And raising boys, I think, in two very specific ways. One is raising emotionally intelligent boys, meaning we have to raise boys normalizing their feelings, normalizing their expression of feelings, normalizing crying, normalizing being sad, normalizing all feelings, not just anger. Anger for boys is very normalized, but all feelings need to be normalized, right? So we need to normalize that with boys, put them in touch with their own feelings from a very early on, from birth, and then talk about how those feelings impact relationships ongoing from childhood through. The second thing is this notice and do system. This is all Sam Kelly. I don't know if you follow her on Instagram. That's the second piece is we teach boys to notice and do, not just to do what mom tells you to do, but to come into the room and notice what needs to be done and do it. To step into the kitchen and realize that like mom's halfway through unloading the dishwasher and then she got interrupted by the baby. I can do the silverware. I'm going to start doing that on my own. That's what we need boys. We need girls to do that too, but girls will do it anyway because they have to. So we really need boys to notice and do. So emotional intelligence and notice and do for boys. I want to definitely give Sam Kelly credit for that because I did not come up with notice and do. I just think it's amazing. That's how we see change. But I don't think that means women are powerless. And I don't think that means that women don't have moves that they can make. I think it's really important to empower women. So I'm very much of the mindset that like empowering women doesn't just mean like, here's how to talk to your husband. It means like, here's how you can make change for yourself in the situation that you're in right now. Maybe you don't have a husband that supports you. Maybe you don't have a husband that's willing to get to know you on a deeper level or get to bond with their kids. And maybe that's the reality. And maybe someday you'll get a divorce, but that doesn't have to be right now. Right now, what I need you to do is start talking out loud about your needs. So I don't get to shower as often as I'd like to shower. So that's first, right? Like I need to start saying that out loud, that I deserve to be able to take a shower when I want. I'm not asking to take 5 a day. Like I would like to take a shower when I want, and I want to make that happen. How do we make that happen? If I'm not sleeping because I'm still waking up at night with my 3-year-old who's waking up every night for the last 3 years, I need sleep. Once a week, I need a full night's sleep. How do we make that happen? The monitor is yours. I am checking out. Or like you figure it out. I need sleep. So I think we empower women to start creating change for themselves. And then I think everything will hit a tipping point in their relationship. And hopefully communication is in a place where we can communicate and men sort of get on board, but we can't control all of that. So all we can do is start with from a place of empowerment and talk to women about what change they can make now and see where that goes.
What I'm feeling it's coming back to too is like the not letting it be normalized. Like even having these conversations, even if nothing changes, just acknowledging out loud that it's not okay.
Yeah.
Acknowledging out loud that this isn't something to celebrate.
Yeah.
This shouldn't be normal. That is such a huge piece in terms of just like what we will accept.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like,
And like
and it's
saying out loud
huge.
that like I work full time. Why am I doing full-time care after work? I work the same amount of hours as you, but I am covering dinners 7 nights a week, or I am covering all pickups from school and daycare. I am covering every single bedtime routine. This is not okay. I don't want to be a super mom. I don't want to do all of this. I did not sign up for it. What I've kind of been talking to clients about lately is like, when you do communicate with your partners, and we have to communicate, right? Like we have to bring this up. It's not fair that we have to. It's on us again. Like add it to our to-do list, like bring up the mental load. So it's not really fair, but I don't have another option right now. So when I tell women when we want to bring this up, like I highly recommend like scheduling it in advance, right? If you're going to talk to your partner about this, you schedule it. I also recommend starting like a weekly, bi-weekly, monthly house meeting where you and your partner get together. And I think an easy segue into talking about the mental load is to just start like opening your calendar and just saying like, I'd like to meet once a week and just compare calendars and make sure we're all on the same page, because that is an easy like logistical way to like open the conversation, right? And then you open the conversation and you're like, okay, I have 75 things on my calendar for this week and you have 3. So what would you like to take from my calendar to put on? You know what I mean? Like it just starts to open that up for opportunity. And then you've done this a couple times and that communication is already in place. This has become a routine. Then you get there and you say, okay, calendars, got it. I'd also like to talk about the birthday party that's coming in 2 months. Here are all the tasks that are involved with the birthday party in 2 months. What are you going to take? And you start, you kind of just start to bring some of those to the table. There's other components too, but that's how I recommend we start. But as part of that conversation, it is also okay to almost go a little deeper and just say that like, you can help with the dishwasher or not. You can help with the laundry or not. Like, I appreciate when you do, but what I really want is like an engaged partner. I want a partner who wants to be on my team and who wants to come home and say like, what are we doing now? Like, what do we need to do for tonight? What's going on with us? Not come home, take a shower, plays video games, and then sits down at the dinner table to eat his dinner, right? Like, I want an engaged team member and an engaged partner. So if you don't have that, don't bother with the dishwasher. Don't bother with the laundry. You need to go there, because the dishwasher and the laundry won't happen consistently or forever. Like, they might help for a day, but if they're not engaged in that relationship or engaged in fatherhood, they're not going to keep unloading the dishwasher. So you can have this conversation depending on where you're at with that communication. And it sucks that we have to do it. It's not fair that women have to lead that. But I do not ever want women to stop talking about it, because the second we stop talking about it and we just keep sort of suffering in silence, we drown. I mean, we will literally drown in silent resentment.
Yeah.
And my number one message is that, like, at minimum, you refuse to do that anymore. You refuse to stay silent about it.
Yeah. I think that's huge. And I think there's a lot about privilege that comes up here. If like men as a whole will not take action on it because they're comfortable. They're benefiting from the system.
Yeah.
So
super comfortable. They're living their best life.
My kid's dad and I separated last summer. So we're coming up on like a year of that. And there's been a lot of transition with like moving out, in the last 6 months and all of that kind of stuff. And it really is interesting. There's been a lot of like learning, just very unrelated to even our relationship and things like that, but like just of like, wow, when I have more time to myself, the difference it makes. Wow, I'm still carrying so much of the mental load.
Yeah.
It's just I do something that this pisses me off, and I think I'm going to call the doctor's office and talk to them about this, but the little reminders you get for appointments, the day before, the texts. I was like at the doctor's office, and my kid's dad took my kid to one appointment and there's a follow-up. And I asked, like, can you make sure these texts go to 2 numbers? The system doesn't allow them to put 2 different numbers in. And I'm like, I'm sorry, what? Like, so I'm responsible now for sharing the appointment date, even though it's on his day and he made the appointment. That's absurd. And it really is like the frustration. But then, as you're saying, like, it is important that we have these conversations, and the frustration can also be empowering because we can share these things and maybe make change too.
Yeah. I think when you start to realize all the ways it's not about you, right? Like all the ways, like, I didn't cause this to happen. I didn't even know it existed. And now when I look around and I see the doctor's office who only calls mom, or I see school who only sends emails to mom, even though I've changed it many times, like there's just like all these, like, I've seen like death by a thousand cuts, right? Like all these little things. And on its face, it's not a big deal. But as a whole, it is a big deal. It's huge.
It's a huge
The weight
deal.
is so heavy. This like death by a thousand cuts is what women are sort of experiencing. That like it's not just one major moment. It's all these tiny ways in which we've been really set up to fail that have nothing to do with our ability. It has nothing to do with our ability to mother, to be a parent, to be a woman, to be a career driven person. Like it has nothing to do with any of that, and everything to do with like the expectations are impossible. But you never know it because the messaging that you get twists it around, and then moms are very, very vulnerable people as a whole. And so it just hits in our vulnerability that like, wow, we gave you the career and we gave you the family and you can't do it. You're complaining. Oh, maybe you need to go take a bubble bath. Like, okay, then we end up feeling like the guilt and the shame for that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's like you can't do it all and you're shamed for not doing it
Yeah.
all. And
Yeah.
it's just this cycle of
Totally. But
like,
that's where the empowerment comes from, I think, is when women start to look out instead of in. Is
Yeah.
when you start to look out. And I don't want to say that women are victims. We have a role to play here too. But when we start to look out to see all the ways that we've been led to this place and this is not our own doing, that is empowering. That's when we say like, this is bullshit and I'm not going to do this anymore. But we have to make that switch first. And that switch can be really hard to make. I think that is also how we raise girls in our country, is to sort of be quiet. Your feelings come second. You have to be careful of your father's feelings. You have to walk on eggshells around your dad or your mom. That like your feelings kind of just need to kind of hang out inside, right? And that you don't bother people with your thoughts. Like just be quiet over there. It's fine. We squash a lot of that down too. And so then we struggle when we start to notice these things to even shift the mindset that we're not at fault, right? Because many of us are people pleasers. Many of us are told over how we were raised that if something goes wrong, then it's typically our fault or we've done something wrong. So I think it's a hard mindset shift to make for men and women.
Yeah, it's a whole, we're all products of the way we are raised in the system that we exist in. And I think, yeah, balancing, like, it's not that we are victims to a system necessarily. We don't want to take on that mentality because it doesn't help, right?
Yeah, sure.
But also acknowledging the fact that there's only so much that we can do. And I actually do think that's kind of empowering to know, like, there's only so much that I can shift. I'm shifting within a system that exists. And so that does release some of the shame and the pressure to like get it right. Because I think we can fall back into those patterns of like, okay, I know this problem exists and I'm trying to fix it and I'm not fixing it fully. So like, what's wrong with me? And it's like, no, we're not getting into that either.
Yeah, right. You could literally try everything or change everything and it wouldn't fix itself. There's only so many bubble baths you could take and it's not solving this problem. So I agree. I think it releases some of the self-deprecation. That's like the self-blame that like, if I'm not achieving this, then I'm the one to blame. But wait a minute, I didn't sign up for this. I didn't agree to this. I don't even want to be a supermom. I don't want to do it all. I don't really want to work 40 hours a week. And I certainly don't want to be with my kids 24/7. So I don't want to do any of this. I want to choose for myself what works for me and my family. But these choices are just continually given to me. I don't get to choose. So I do think that releases a lot of that self-blame. But it is still a tricky mindset to shift through. But I think the reason women are more readily making that shift is, I mean, A, because women are the one experiencing it firsthand, but B, women tend to be more in touch with their emotions, right? That like, even through a childhood where you're not supposed to bother others, women are more allowed to have their emotions. They're allowed to cry. They're expected to kind of be emotional, right? So when they start therapy and when they realize that this is bullshit and I want to change something, they've already got that foundational connection to their feelings. And so they can start working on it. Men don't have that. They don't have that foundational connection to their own feelings. And so you're almost like, you have this barrier, this like door in the way, and they have to open it themselves. You cannot force that door open. So when you have that as a hurdle, that's a big hurdle because this entire like conversation's about emotion. It's about feelings. And so when one party doesn't even have that for themselves or anybody else, like, how do you have that conversation? You can't. That's why when you bring up how you feel, you're met with defense or you're met with like, why are you saying I'm a bad dad? Or like, it just turns around them because they don't they're not able to be vulnerable in that moment and be like,
Mm-hmm.
wait, have I been a bad partner? Like, wait, have I not been engaged lately? Have I been on my phone a lot? Have I not asked you how your day was in weeks? Let me think about that. We don't get that, right? We get like, oh, so you're saying I'm a bad dad. Okay. And then they slam the door and they storm off and then they check out for 3 hours and then pretend everything's fine. It's the same cycle every single day. So anyway.
Yeah. And again, it's like so frustrating. And also, it's so important that we talk about other factors because
Yeah.
it's what we're working with.
And I think, again, there's patriarchy, there's, how we were raised, how our society raises children. And then there's social media, right? It is an undeniable factor at play that it adds extra pressure and that it makes us too privy to how other people are living. And mothers in particular, you commented on this earlier, that like mothers are watched, they're judged. I've said before that like mothers are surveilled, right? That like when you're in Target and your child is screaming, they're not looking at your child, they're looking at you. And if the dad was there, they'd be saying, what a good dad, he's helping his screaming child. But if it's mom, then it's like, why is your child screaming? You must have done something wrong. So moms are surveilled. They're the ones who are judged. And I think that is very much a social media phenomenon, right? That this world that we live in now. So definitely one piece of empowerment is that I can choose to step back from that a little bit. That I curate my feed to be a place of empowerment and that I step back from posting so much or asking for, support. Online support is important and virtual support can be very important, but that maybe I need to take a step back for my own mental health in order to sort of empower myself to stop seeking approval of the decisions I make and the choices I make and to stop putting myself out there because it's not led to any positive growth for me. So it is definitely a piece of the puzzle.
Yeah. Well, and I think there's so much benefit on social media when you are on social media following accounts that are sharing more realistic views of motherhood. I know you do a really great job of that, of just like having the conversations that are, again, choosing not to normalize this image, right? And so breaking that up with people, like sharing the realities and talking about the supermom myth, naming these things. It's important.
Yeah, it's not realistic to like say like, well, I'm never going to be on social media forever, because I think it also provides a point of connection and that our society currently is very isolating to mothers. That's another pandemic. I mean, it was before that too, but that was another pandemic like exacerbation of isolation, right? So mothers are extremely isolated, and if they find support virtually, that's amazing. And I don't want them to stop accessing that. But I do think it's important to be critical about the content that you take in and that you are limiting the amount of like sort of mindless, disassociated scrolling, because I think that's where it starts to kind of do more harm than good. But by all means, please like keep the group chat, keep the Facebook group that feels supportive. Like don't stop doing those things. You just have to be critical and like be intentional about the choices that you make. Yeah. And you know what? That becomes easier when we take care of ourselves every single day. It's way easier to not scroll at bedtime if you've eaten a lot of protein, if you've exercised a little bit, if you've like drank water and like went for a walk. So much easier to not scroll at bedtime. So like you can't start with not scrolling. You have to start with meeting your needs through the day.
Yeah. Okay. I love ending conversations talking about caring for ourselves and talking about like this idea of self-care. You brought up bubble baths a few times. I was like, that's not going to fix anything. And so that's really the purpose of me asking guests about how they care for themselves, because it's like, how do we really care for ourselves as moms? We have needs that need to be met.
Sure.
How do we meet those needs? And so I would love to just ask you how you care for yourself as a mom, as somebody who has a career and is raising a child. And do you have any advice for moms just to make sure that they are also getting their needs met regularly?
I think it's important to tune into yourself to see like, what are my basic needs? Like what for me feels crucial to my mood and to feeling like my cup is being filled. So for me, that means going for walks, like moving my body, not exercising. I mean, exercising is good, but like for me, it just means like walking, right? Like moving my body. So like that's a basic need for me. Lots of water, obviously, like eating good food. Alone time is a really important basic need. And I think that's a human need. So I count it as a basic need for all moms, but like I need some alone time. I need a little bit every day. And I don't need, a 3-hour spa appointment alone. I just mean like I need some time to decompress. So alone time I think is important. And then for me, like I like to be creative. I also really like to cook. And that brings up an interesting point that I once told somebody that, and they told me that cooking can't be self-care because it's I'm doing it for other people, and like I'm doing it for the family and I have to cook anyway. And I was like, well, cooking chicken nuggets is not self-care, but being able to like find a recipe that like I really enjoy, like that's for me is self-care, and that I like want to buy the ingredients for it. And so like I want to set it up and do all the things and not be interrupted while I'm doing it. Like for me, that's self-care. So I think that that led me to like sort of a thought process that like it doesn't matter what the task is that you're doing or you're engaging in for self-care. What matters is how it makes you feel. Like it could be the going to the dentist. It could be walking in a park by yourself. It could be cooking, making soup. It doesn't matter what it is. But if you leave that task feeling like, okay, I'm doing the things, I'm feeling okay, I can do bedtime tonight, like that's self-care. That means you took care of yourself. So I don't care if it's going to the dentist. If you love going to the dentist and you find that relaxing and your dentist is amazing and they turn off the lights and there's a sound machine and it's cool, great. Like we have to stop judging people's self-care, and we really have to stop even talking about the task itself and really honing in on like, I want to know how that makes you feel, because if that makes you feel fulfilled, you need to do that again. You need to repeat it. For me, cooking is one of them. We garden. And so like I find a lot of fulfillment in using what we garden in our food and like doing stuff with that. There's a few different outlets, but I do know every single day I need a little bit of movement and a little bit of alone time. And if we're not getting those, I don't care what your hobbies are. I don't care what else you do. Nothing else matters. You have to start with those, and you just have to say them out loud. You have to say like, I'm finding I need 30 minutes of alone time every day. You seem to get 2 hours of alone time every day on your way to and from work, at the gym, when you do this thing. So how can I make this happen for me? And then if you don't find support, you make it happen. You outsource it. You hire a sitter. You do what you got to do. And there's a lot of privilege there, and we know that. We could rabbit hole that as well. But that hopefully that was like a very long-winded answer to your very simple question, which was what?
Yeah, no. It's my favorite question to ask because it's a really important conversation to be having, especially with the way that self-care for moms is talked about.
Yeah, I think when you ask many moms, I mean, you have a lot of therapists on here and like people who have thought about this before. But if you ask a day-to-day mom, a lot of moms would be like, I don't know, like like I should probably eat, and I know I like to shower. So I think most moms are just not even given enough opportunity to know. Like if I had a hobby, what would it be? I don't know. So it is a big question. And so I would encourage, if there's a listener who like feels like I don't know how to answer that question, you start with your basic needs. You start with the things that make you a human being: food, water, sunlight, movement, showers, sleep. That's it. You start with that. And then you get those nailed down, and then that'll open more doors for you to see like, okay, I'm feeling good today. I'm feeling like taken care of today. I could read a book. I could ride my bike. I could go for a walk. Like I could do something else, but nothing else matters until you meet your basic human needs.
Yeah, if you're in survival mode.
Yeah. You got to start there, and you have to say them out loud.
Yeah. Thank you so much for being here. This has been such a wonderful conversation. Can you share with listeners where they can find you? Again, your social media presence is
I'm mostly
fabulous.
on Instagram. After all this discussion about like, social media being terrible for surveilling mothers. Well, that's where I am. So I'm on Instagram, though. My handle is Stacy McCann, LCSW. I'm mostly there. And then through there, you can find links to all like my services and all the things that I do. I do see therapy clients only in Missouri and Illinois based on licensure, but I see parenting clients anywhere. And I do also have a virtual community. It's called Supermom Dropout Club. And it is just for kind of moms to come on and have a safe place to talk about mental load. I've interviewed a bunch of people in there and posted those recordings. I have resources in there. So I would love any moms who just need a safe place, especially off the big social media apps, to come check that out. That's also, if you find me on Instagram, it's an easy way to find that as well.
Amazing. I love just that you're creating places for moms to have these conversations, whether that's in, a therapy or coaching relationship, or even just in community with one another. It's huge.
That's what we're trying to do. Yeah.
Really important.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate the ability to have this conversation.
Totally. Thank you so much for being here. And thank you for listening. I hope that this episode has just given you permission or inspiration to let go of the supermom idea somewhat, right? Like, we know we exist in this world, it's there, but hopefully this is a good perspective shift. See you next week. You are worthy, mama.